one thing that I would love to get your view on is using your insight as an orthopedist. My aunt, for example, she's a cardiothoracic surgeon here in Brazil. Her shoulder was killing her. She couldn't do a surgery without taking painkillers. And then I started talking to her about the carnivore diet and how it could help her with inflammation and things like that. And after 3 weeks on the carnivore diet, her pain was like 85% gone. She was able to like do the surgeries without taking painkillers. It's now completely gone after a couple of months. Have you thought about why these improvements happen on a carnivore diet after happening to, for example, all of your patients? Do you see it often?
Well, I think that, at least in part, a lot of the disease, as we talk about, all disease begins in the gut. And so a lot of people have dysbiosis or gut dysfunction in various types from the diet. And this seems to clear that up quite nicely. And when you are, when your gut permeability is altered, you allow for these inflammatory compounds to enter the body, and then that can cause inflammation throughout the body, whether it's the shoulder joints or the knee joints or the back or even the brain. So by fixing that, decreasing the inflammation, a lot of times we see joint pain go away. Additionally, and we know that high levels of insulin also can contribute to increased inflammation. And again, insulin often will decrease on a carnivore diet in many people. So there's a number of mechanisms out there by which this occurs. I mean, there's published papers looking at comparing, for instance, very low carb diets versus low fat diets when it comes to like knee osteoarthritis. And clearly the lower carb diet performed much better. So we know that lowering carbs often helps with inflammation in the joints. And that's one of the most common things I see. I was at a meeting in a little meeting last week, and there was about 100 people in attendance. And I asked them how many of them saw their joint pain get better when they went carnivore, and probably 2/3 of the room raised their hand. Now, these are people in their 50s and 60s. So clearly it has an impact on that. And as an orthopedic surgeon who dealt with arthritis his whole career, this is really, really interesting stuff.
And maybe that's because they lose weight as well. But I see people before losing weight saying that the pain improved, right? So it's not only about the weight, carrying the extra weight, it's about inflammation too, and that's very interesting. And talking about the weight, Dr. Baker, I've seen a lot of doctors in Brazil talking about the GLP-1 inhibitors as a treatment to increase weight loss. What is your take on the Ozempics, the Mounjaros, and do you think like a carnivore diet by itself could be beneficial to people trying to lose weight that are overweight without taking the drugs, or do you have any other idea about that?
Well, so if we look at the mechanism by which these drugs work, GLP-1 is what's called an incretin hormone. It's secreted by our intestines, primarily in our ileum, in response to nutrition in the body. Normally, what happens is when nutrients make its way through the intestines and basically too much gets there, the body says slow things down because we need to absorb this stuff. And so meat, actually there are studies that show that beef actually stimulates GLP-1 very nicely in the body. So a lot of people notice a natural sense of satiety when this occurs. And so the GLP-1 receptor agonists, which are similar to GLP-1, they act on the receptor. They're not exactly a GLP-1 like in the body, but they're similar. But it stays around in the body for days and days and days, whereas in the normal situation, it's only around for a few minutes. And so what happens is a lot of people have severe side effects. Their stomach stops emptying, they get gastroparesis, sometimes they get intestinal obstructions or blockages. There's all kinds of other side effects. A lot of people lose an inordinate amount of lean mass, so they lose all their muscle, which is a real problem. Now, you can combat that with a lot of protein and weightlifting, but most patients aren't willing to do that. That's why they go on the drugs in the first place, because they tend to just want to take a pill. So you end up with all these potential long-term side effects. And the other thing is we know that those drugs only keep the weight off if you keep taking them the rest of your life. So if you want to take a pill for the rest of your life, then this is a route you might want to go.
Galera, um comunicado rapidinho aqui, vai durar 20 segundos. Só queria falar, se vocês têm vontade de se juntar à minha comunidade privada da Dieta Carnívora, onde todo mundo tem o mesmo objetivo, todo mundo tem a vontade de aprender, dúvidas são tiradas lá e você tá dentro de uma comunidade bem exclusiva, clica aqui no link da descrição. Tô fazendo uma promoção de tempo limitado, que se você entrar na minha comunidade privada hoje, você ganha 2 e-books pelo preço de um. Em cima disso, let's go!
But for those of us who don't want to be on drugs for the rest of our life, obviously something like a carnivore diet might be just as good or perhaps even better for many people. I think that, you know, for the average person that wants to lose a little bit of weight, there's way better ways to do that. You probably don't need to be on these drugs. And I know there's a lot of people that promote these, and there's a lot of money to be made by doing so, but it comes at a cost, like always. Like every weight loss drug that's ever been on the market, for the most part, has been pulled due to side effects. There are people that have, you know, have maintained that this has caused death in a lot of patients. There's clearly lots of patients where severe side effects have been caused in the number of thousands upon thousands and thousands of people, and more will show up, you know, as the years go by. So there's better ways to do it. I personally don't prescribe it. I'm not someone who is interested in that. I think there's, like I said, I think you have to, if you want to ultimately fix someone's obesity or other disease, you have to get to the root cause, which is in many cases food addiction, addiction to ultra processed foods, and you got to get them to stop eating it. And by taking a drug to tell them to moderate it or limit it is often going to result in, like I said, you know, basically being stuck on this drug for the rest of your life.
So is it your point of view that the people are addicted to food, and the carbs, the refined carbs, the ultra processed food, they are addictive, and telling people that they could just like eat once in a while the donut or the pizza or something like that, that's not ideal for people that want to get away from this vicious cycle, right? Of always eating again and then getting fat and then getting slim again. So would you say getting rid of the foods that might be addictive would be the best possible thing that a person could do in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure. I think these, you know, the foods that are out there have been designed by food chemists and food scientists to be extremely addicting. I've actually talked to some of those people that say that their job was to make the food as addictive as possible. I mean, they know that going in, and they're good at it. I mean, these foods are, and this is why every year we have to have new foods come out with new flavors and new colors and new packaging to kind of keep people trying the new thing, because they know that, you know, they have to do that to grow their audience and grow their customer base. Whereas real foods are not particularly addicting, but they're incredibly nourishing, and that's what we should really focus on.
Yeah, understandable. And let's say, for example, Dr. Baker, someone gets into the carnivore diet, but they are at that point outside of the curve that they do stall on the weight loss. What is your advice to those kind of people that want to see results but are not seeing initially the results in the carnivore diet regarding weight loss?
Well, you know, like I said, diet is a crucial part of health. You know, I don't believe you can be healthy on a really bad diet, you know, over the long term. So I think you have to fix your diet at some point. Now, it's not the only thing that matters. You know, I think sleep is incredibly, I would put sleep right up there with diet, quite honestly, or close to it. So if you're not focusing on good quality sleep, you're going to be compromised. The next thing I would look at is activity level. You know, you should not be sedentary. If you have a job or a lifestyle where you spend most of your time still or sitting, that's a real problem. You have to address that. From there, we look into then, does it make sense to do some sort of exercise or strength training? I think those things are important. Also, stress. Stress can be very damaging to our health, to our efforts to lose weight. Can lead to significant inflammation. And so dealing with stress and how you adapt to that. Now, some people have good coping mechanisms. Sometimes you just have to take yourself out of that stressful environment. If you can, not everybody can, but if you can't, then you have to be able to cope with it and mitigate it through different activities. I think light is important. I think our relationship with the sun, you know, is important. So sleeping when it's dark, not staying up too late at night, you know, looking at blue light and electronics, getting out in some sunshine when it's available, you know, on a you know, daily basis if possible. Folks in Brazil will have a good, you know, that's, you know, because they're close to the equator, have a lot more sunshine than a lot of places in the world. So that should be something that we should strive to, because I mean, a lot of us have been taught that the sun is harmful to us, and it's, you know, we need to cover ourselves all the time and put sunscreen on. Now, it's not, we shouldn't burn, we shouldn't get out there and get sunburned, but we should get, you know, as much as possible, some daily frequent exposure to sunlight. I mean, here I'm up in, you know, I'm up near Seattle, Washington, so wintertime it's tough, but in the summer I'm out early in the morning, first thing in the morning, take my dogs for a nice walk out in the sunshine. I honestly feel a lot better, you know, when I'm able to do that. So much to the point that I consider moving somewhere closer to the warm weather, you know, maybe down to Florida or something like that. So anyway, those are some things I think are important.